Picture standing in the middle of a scorching desert thousands of years ago. No pumps, no electricity, no modern tools, and yet, somehow, water flows steadily from a mountain spring miles away, defying the harsh landscape to nourish an entire city. This wasn't magic. It was the work of ancient engineers whose mastery of water defied their time. Today, we take running water for granted, but long before steel pipes and pressure systems, civilizations across the globe solved water challenges with such breathtaking ingenuity that their creations still leave scientists in awe. Welcome to a journey through time as we uncover the 23 forgotten water engineering marvels that didn't just sustain ancient life, they revolutionized it. Think about the last time you turned on a faucet or watched water cascade down a fountain. Behind that simple act lies a legacy of innovation stretching back millennia. From the labyrinthine underground tunnels of Persia to the towering stepwells of India, these structures weren't just functional. They were works of art, feats of science, and testaments to human perseverance. These ancient builders manipulated gravity, harnessed natural forces, and bent landscapes to their will, creating systems so advanced that some remain in use today. How did they do it? What secrets did they understand about water that we're only now rediscovering? This isn't just a story of pipes and reservoirs. It's a tale of survival, ambition, and the unyielding human spirit. Water shaped empires. It determined where cities rose, how wars were won, and why some cultures thrived while others vanished. The Romans, the Persians, the Maya, they all faced the same life or death question: how to conquer the relentless demands of thirst and agriculture. Their answers transformed deserts into gardens and rocky cliffs into lifelines. So let's dive into these hidden chapters of history, where every drop of water tells a story of brilliance. By the end, you'll see the world's oldest rivers, wells, and aqueducts not as relics, but as monuments to the minds who built the foundations of our modern world. Ready to uncover the lost wonders that changed everything? Let's begin. Deep beneath the sun-baked deserts of ancient Persia, an invisible network of tunnels stretched for miles, carrying life-giving water to places where none should have existed. These were the Kanats engineering marvels, so brilliantly simple yet effective that they transformed barren landscapes into thriving oases. Picture this: workers digging vertical shafts into the earth at precise intervals, then connecting them with gently sloping tunnels that channeled water from mountain aquifers to arid valleys below. No pumps, no electricity, just pure gravity guiding every drop with flawless precision. What made the Kanat system truly revolutionary wasn't just its functionality, but its elegance. By keeping water underground, the Persians solved two critical problems at once. First, they avoided the brutal desert sun that would have evaporated surface channels in hours. Second, they protected their precious supply from dust storms and invaders. Some Kanats ran for over 30 miles, delivering water so clean and cold that it became a symbol of Persian ingenuity. Villages and cities flourished along these hidden lifelines, with communal wells marking each vertical shaft, social hubs where people gathered not just to draw water, but to share news and cool off in the shade. The genius of the Kanat builders lay in their understanding of terrain and hydrology. They read the land like a map, identifying natural aquifers in distant mountains and calculating slopes with astonishing accuracy. Even today, modern engineers marvel at how these ancient systems maintained a gradient of just 1 foot per mile, enough to keep water moving steadily without eroding the tunnels. And when Kanats crossed valleys or obstacles, The Persians built ingenious underground siphons, using air pressure to push water uphill in a technique that wouldn't be replicated in Europe for centuries. But perhaps the most striking testament to their legacy is how far their influence spread. From the Fagaras of North Africa to the Kores of Central Asia, variations of the Kanat system appeared across deserts worldwide. Even now, over 3,000 of these tunnels still function in Iran alone, some after 2,000 years of continuous use. Modern drip irrigation owes a debt to their water-efficient design, proving that sustainability isn't a new concept, just a forgotten one. Standing at the mouth of a Kanat, where cool air whispers up from the darkness, you can almost hear the echoes of ancient engineers laughing at our so-called modern solutions. They mastered the desert with nothing but shovel, sight, and sheer brilliance long before the first textbook on hydrology was ever written. Now picture a well, but not just any well. Imagine a colossal inverted pyramid carved into the earth, its walls lined with thousands of symmetrical steps descending into the darkness like a geometric dream. This is the Stepwell of ancient India, where engineering met artistry in a breathtaking dance of form and function. Unlike simple holes in the ground, these structures were multi-leveled masterpieces, some plunging over 10 stories deep to reach groundwater during the harshest droughts. But they weren't just reservoirs, they were subterranean cathedrals where every step, every carving, told a story of survival and spirituality. Take Chand Bayori, one of the largest and most intricate stepwells ever built. With 3,500 steps arranged in perfect crisscrossing patterns, it resembles an Escher drawing brought to life. The precision is staggering, each step designed to cast shadows that cool the water below, reducing evaporation under India's blistering sun. But the real genius lies in the steps themselves. Unlike modern pumps that force water upward, these wells invited entire communities to descend toward the source, turning a mundane task into a sacred ritual. Women balancing water pots on their heads would traverse the steps in a rhythmic procession, while priests chanted from carved niches adorned with deities. Water gathering became meditation in motion. What's often overlooked is how these structures doubled as ancient climate control systems. The deeper one descended, the more the temperature dropped, sometimes by 20 degrees, creating natural refrigerators for food storage and cool retreats for villagers during heat waves. The ornate pillars and archways weren't merely decorative, they stabilized the walls against erosion while channeling monsoon rains into efficient collection systems. Some stepwells even featured secret tunnels leading to nearby temples, allowing priests to emerge dramatically from the underworld during ceremonies. The spiritual symbolism ran as deep as the wells themselves. Many were aligned with celestial events, where sunlight would pierce the shaft at solstices, illuminating hidden carvings of gods. Rani Kai Vav, another legendary stepwell, resembles an inverted temple with over 500 sculptures depicting Hindu cosmology, a literal stairway between earthly and divine realms. When droughts came, these weren't just pits of desperation but places of prayer, where offerings were made to Varuna, the god of waters. Today, many lie forgotten, their steps swallowed by silt or their walls crumbling into obscurity. Yet their legacy whispers through modern architecture, from the stepped gardens of Babylon to the sunken courtyards of contemporary museums. They remind us that necessity births more than utility. It can inspire transcendent beauty. Standing at the edge of Chand Bayori, staring into its hypnotic symmetry, you realize these weren't just feats of engineering. They were mirrors held up to human ingenuity, reflecting how civilizations can turn survival into something sublime. While the towering arches of the Pont du Gard might steal the spotlight, Rome's true hydraulic mastery lay hidden in the silent workhorses like the Aqua Anio Novus, an aqueduct so colossal it could fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool every 7 minutes. Stretching 54 miles from its mountain source to Rome, this engineering titan didn't just deliver water. It defied geography with a slope so precise it dropped only 1 foot every 1,500 feet. That's like tilting a football field just 2 inches from end to end, a gradient modern lasers struggle to match. What made Roman aqueducts revolutionary wasn't their grandeur, but their ruthless efficiency. Unlike Persia's underground Kanats, Rome's engineers embraced gravity in the open air, stacking arches like mathematical poetry to maintain elevation across valleys. But here's the twist, only 30% of these systems ran above ground. The majority snaked through underground tunnels, carved through bedrock with hand tools, where the cool earth kept water fresh and shielded it from enemies. The Aqua Marcia, for instance, plunged through miles of volcanic stone, its builders using fire and vinegar to fracture rock, an ancient version of hydraulic fracturing. The materials tell another story of innovation. Romans mixed volcanic ash with lime to create pozzolana concrete, a self-healing marvel that grew stronger underwater. While modern concrete crumbles in decades, sections of the Aqua Claudia still stand after 2,000 years of earthquakes and weather, and their maintenance strategies. Pure genius, access shafts dotted the routes like subway vents, allowing workers called aquarii to scrub mineral buildup with vinegar-soaked sponges, a primitive but effective descaling system. Perhaps most astonishing was their water distribution network. At Rome's terminal Castellum tanks, lead pipes branched like capillaries, feeding public baths, fountains, and even private homes. Flow rates were regulated by bronze valves, and sedimentation tanks filtered debris. The system was so advanced that when modern engineers modeled it, they found pressure levels rivaling 20th century municipal water supplies. Yet the real legacy lies in the philosophy behind these structures. While Egyptian pharaohs hoarded water for elites, Rome's aqueducts were democratic marvels. 95% of their output served public needs. The average Roman had access to more water daily than 19th century Londoners. That's why ruins of Roman baths are found from Africa to Britain. They weren't just infrastructure, but tools of cultural unity. Today, as cities grapple with leaking pipes and water shortages, the silent stones of the Anio Novus whisper a lesson that engineering isn't just about moving water, but sustaining civilization itself. Among all the ancient wonders, none sparks more mystery than the legendary Hanging Gardens of Babylon, a paradise said to have risen above the desert sands like a mirage made real. Ancient historians like Strabo and Diodorus Siculus described terraced gardens towering over 300 feet high, dripping with vines and fruit trees that shouldn't have survived a week in Mesopotamia's scorching heat. But here's the puzzle. Archaeologists have yet to find physical proof beneath Babylon's ruins. So were these gardens myth, misunderstanding, or one of history's greatest lost feats of engineering? If they existed, the gardens would have demanded water solutions bordering on sorcery. Picture the challenge, lifting thousands of gallons daily from the Euphrates River to the garden's highest tier against unrelenting gravity. Greek accounts mention a screw pump system, possibly an early version of Archimedes' invention, but some scholars propose something even bolder. Cuneiform tablets hint at a chain pump mechanism, buckets mounted on a rotating loop powered by slaves or oxen, endlessly hauling water upward through hidden shafts. The water would then cascade down terraces through a network of reed pipes and porous clay pots, creating a self-watering ecosystem where roots drank from capillary action alone. The garden's real genius might have been in their materials. Recent theories suggest the hanging plants grew not in soil, but in layered beds of gravel, charcoal, and gypsum, a lightweight, moisture-trapping cocktail that prevented evaporation. Bitumen-coated terraces could have acted as waterproof barriers, while shaded walkways funneled cool breezes to mimic a mountain microclimate. It's no wonder later writers claimed the gardens were built to soothe a homesick Median queen longing for her forested homeland. Only hydraulic alchemy could conjure such an illusion in the desert. Yet the lack of physical evidence raises fascinating questions. Could the gardens have been misattributed to Babylon when they actually stood in Nineveh? Assyrian records describe King Sennacherib's palace gardens fed by an aqueduct system with precisely the water-lifting tech the Babylonians supposedly lacked. Or perhaps the gardens weren't a single structure, but a series of verdant rooftop terraces spread across the city, their collective splendor exaggerated over centuries into one mythical wonder. Whether fact or fable, the Hanging Gardens' legacy persists because they represent an impossible dream, humanity bending nature's rules to create beauty against all odds. Modern rooftop gardens in cities like Singapore owe a conceptual debt to this ancient ambition, proof that even if Babylon's hanging paradise never existed, the idea alone was fertile enough to root itself across millennia. The real wonder may be how a story without stones still stands so tall in our imagination. Buried beneath the dry plains of modern-day Pakistan lies a 4,000-year-old surprise, a swimming pool. Not just any pool, but the Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro, a watertight marvel so precisely engineered it could rival modern municipal tanks. This rectangular tank, measuring 12 meters long and 7 meters wide, wasn't for leisure. It was the beating heart of an ancient city's ritual and hygiene, lined with bricks tighter than a ship's hull and sealed with natural tar that still repels water today. What makes the Great Bath extraordinary isn't just its preservation, but the sophistication hidden beneath its steps. A network of underground drains snaked through the city, channeling used water away from residences with a slope so consistent it suggests the Harappans used primitive surveying tools. The bath itself had a clever two-layered design, an outer shell of loose bricks to absorb ground moisture, and an inner chamber lined with bitumen, an ancient asphalt that prevented leaks. Even the steps leading into the water were angled to minimize splashing, a detail modern architects would applaud. But here's the real shocker: this wasn't a fluke. Excavations reveal Mohenjo-Daro had hundreds of wells and bathing platforms in private homes, all connected to covered drains. Some houses even had chutes directing wastewater straight into street channels, proving urban sanitation wasn't a Roman invention. It was thriving in the Indus Valley 2 millennia earlier. The Great Bath was merely the crown jewel of a civilization that treated water management with religious reverence. Scholars debate whether the tank served ritual purification or public health, but the evidence leans toward both. Artifacts suggest priests used its waters for ceremonies, while the city's obsession with cleanliness, seen in every neighborhood's bathing areas, hints at an early grasp of disease prevention. Unlike later cultures that saw water as a tool for conquest, like Rome, the Harappans treated it as sacred geometry, integrating hydraulic engineering with spiritual practice. Today, as we grapple with megacities straining under outdated sewers, the Great Bath whispers an uncomfortable truth. We didn't invent urban water management, we inherited it. Those tar-sealed bricks outlasted empires because their builders understood something we often forget: that water isn't just a resource, but the foundation of civilization itself. In the bone-dry expanse of Peru's Nazca Desert, where rainfall measures less than an inch per decade, an ancient people performed what seems like hydrological magic. They built the Pukuios spiraling stone wells that reached deep into the earth, tapping into secret rivers flowing beneath the sand. Unlike any other water system on the planet, these structures resembled giant stone corkscrews plunging into the desert floor, their exact purpose and construction method still puzzling archaeologists today. The genius of the Pukuios lay in their simplicity and adaptability. Each one consisted of a central shaft lined with river stones, spiraling downward like a nautilus shell to access underground aquifers. Horizontal tunnels branched out like spokes on a wheel, allowing water to seep slowly through porous rock while filtering out sediment. But here's what truly baffles researchers. How did the Nazca, without modern surveying tools, know exactly where to dig to intersect these hidden water veins? Some theories suggest they followed the paths of dry riverbeds or observed where certain plants thrived, indicating subsurface moisture. Others propose they used auditory techniques, listening for echoes when stones were dropped into trial pits to detect hollow spaces below. What's undeniable is the system's effectiveness. The Pukuios created a natural air conditioning effect. As wind entered the spiral openings above ground, it created pressure differences that actually pushed water through the tunnels without pumps, an early example of passive hydraulic engineering. Farmers could direct this flow to their fields through stone-lined canals, transforming patches of desert into fertile oases where they grew cotton, maize, and the famous Nazca potatoes. The mystery deepens when we consider maintenance. Unlike Roman aqueducts that required constant cleaning, the Pukuios were self-sustaining. Their spiral design prevented collapse during earthquakes, while the filtering action of the stone walls kept the water pure. Even more astonishing, some still function today, over 1,500 years after their construction. Modern attempts to replicate them have failed to match their efficiency, proving the Nazca understood their desert environment in ways we're still trying to decode. Perhaps most intriguing is the connection to the Nazca lines. Many Pukuios are positioned along the same astronomical alignments as the giant geoglyphs, suggesting water management and celestial observation were deeply intertwined in their culture. In a land where survival depended on finding every hidden drop, the Pukuios weren't just infrastructure, they were sacred technology, turning the desert's harshest limitation into its most precious gift. Standing beside one today, you can still hear water whispering up from the darkness, a testament to ingenuity that outlasted empires. While the Romans often get credit for pioneering plumbing, the true masters of hydraulic luxury lived over 1,000 years earlier on the sun-drenched island of Crete. In the labyrinthine palace of Knossos, archaeologists uncovered something that rewrote the history of sanitation. A network of interlocking terracotta pipes so advanced they wouldn't be matched until the Victorian era. These weren't crude channels, but carefully engineered conduits with tapered ends that fit together like puzzle pieces, sealed with a primitive mortar to prevent leaks. What set the Minoan system apart was its sheer ambition. While other Bronze Age cultures hauled water in buckets, Knossos had gravity-fed pipelines bringing fresh water from mountain springs 9 miles away. But here's the real shocker. They didn't just deliver water, they recycled it. The palace's iconic, flushing toilets worked on a principle we'd recognize today. Terracotta seats with hinged wooden lids emptied into clay chutes that whisked waste away through underground channels. These weren't pit latrines, but proper flush systems where rainwater collected in rooftop cisterns could be released to cleanse the conduits. The sophistication extended to temperature control. Some pipes ran beneath floors, likely part of an early radiant heating system, while others fed ornate fountain courtyards where the sound of bubbling water enhanced the palace's tranquil atmosphere. Analysis of the pipe interiors reveals mineral deposits proving they carried both hot and cold water, possibly for the world's first documented hot and cold running water system. Yet the most intriguing detail is how these pipes reflect Minoan values. Unlike Roman aqueducts built for mass utility, Knossos plumbing served an almost artistic purpose. Conduits were painted with marine motifs, and certain pipes were deliberately tuned to create harmonic sounds as water rushed through them. This wasn't just engineering, it was hydraulic poetry. Modern excavations keep revealing new layers of complexity. Recent scans show the pipes follow precise gradients calculated to maintain optimal water pressure, with sedimentation tanks to filter debris. Some corridors even had inspection holes where maintenance workers could check flow rates, a Bronze Age version of modern access panels. The tragedy. This knowledge vanished when the Minoan civilization collapsed around 1450 BCE. Europe wouldn't see comparable sanitation again until the 19th century. Those humble clay pipes whisper a humbling truth that progress isn't always linear, and sometimes the future arrives far earlier than we're ready to receive it. The ancient Egyptians didn't just measure time, they made it flow. In the shadow of pyramids and temples, a quieter marvel ticked away the hours not with gears or pendulums, but with the steady drip of water. These were the clepsydras or water clocks, and they represented one of humanity's first attempts to harness hydraulics for something beyond survival. Imagine a world without sundowns at night or cloudy days disrupting timekeeping. These ingenious devices worked around the clock, proving that water's potential stretched far beyond irrigation. The simplest Egyptian water clocks were elegant in their precision. A stone or ceramic vessel with a small hole near the bottom would slowly drain, its interior marked with carefully spaced lines indicating the passage of hours. But here's where it gets brilliant. The markings weren't uniform. The Egyptians understood that water flows faster when the vessel is full and slows as it empties due to decreasing pressure. So they spaced the lines closer together near the top and wider at the bottom, compensating for the variable rate, a stroke of mathematical insight that wouldn't be formalized until Bernoulli's principle centuries later. Priests used these clocks to time nocturnal rituals, ensuring offerings were made at exact intervals even under starless skies. One surviving example from Amenhotep Roman III reign, carved from alabaster and shaped like a flower pot, could measure 12 hours with an error margin of just 15 minutes. But the real sophistication lay in their adaptability. Some temple clocks featured multiple chambers or floating indicators, early attempts at creating alarm functions. When the water level hit a certain point, it would trigger a mechanical bird to whistle or a hammer to strike a gong, alerting attendants to change shifts or begin ceremonies. What's often overlooked is how these clocks mirrored the Egyptians' cosmic worldview. The outflow of water symbolized the cyclical nature of time, echoing the annual flooding of the Nile that renewed their lands. Some clocks even had adjustable holes to account for seasonal changes in water viscosity, wider in winter when temperatures made water flow slower, narrower in summer. This wasn't just engineering, it was philosophy in motion, blending celestial order with earthly mechanics. The legacy of these devices rippled across civilizations. Greek astronomers refined them into more complex instruments, while Chinese versions incorporated gears by the Tang dynasty. Today, as we glance at our smartphones for the time, we're heirs to that first moment when an Egyptian artisan watched water drip and saw not just liquid, but the very pulse of existence measured in falling drops. The clepsydra reminds us that innovation isn't always about scale. Sometimes history's quietest revolutions happen one careful drop at a time. Amidst the vast lake system of the Valley of Mexico, the Aztecs faced an impossible challenge: how to build a metropolis on water. Their solution, the Chinampas, floating gardens that turned a seemingly uninhabitable swamp into the agricultural engine of Tenochtitlan, a city so abundant it stunned Spanish conquistadors with its marketplaces overflowing with maize, beans, and flowers. These weren't mere rafts of soil, but meticulously engineered plots of land anchored to the lakebed, combining hydrology, agriculture, and urban planning in a system so efficient it could yield up to 7 harvests per year. The construction of a Chinampa was a feat of precision. Workers wove reed mats into rectangular frames, then layered them with mud from the lake bottom rich in nutrients from centuries of decomposed aquatic plants. Willow trees were planted at the edges, their roots knitting into natural retaining walls that stabilized the structure against waves. But here's the true brilliance. The canals between each plot functioned as more than just waterways. They acted as thermal regulators, absorbing sunlight by day and releasing warmth by night to protect crops from frost, while the constant capillary action kept soil perpetually moist. Farmers could tend their plots from canoes, reaching down to harvest vegetables without ever stepping onto the land. What set the Chinampas apart was their sustainability. Unlike modern monoculture farms, these gardens operated on a closed-loop system. Aquatic plants like duckweed and algae, considered weeds elsewhere, were deliberately cultivated to replenish nutrients in the water. Fish thrived in the canals, providing protein while their waste fertilized crops. Even human waste from the city was composted and returned to the gardens, an early example of circular economy principles. The result, Tenochtitlan's 200,000 residents enjoyed a diet more diverse than most European capitals of the time, with avocados, tomatoes, and amaranth grown alongside staples. The scale was staggering. At their peak, Chinampas covered over 12,000 hectares, producing enough surplus to feed not just the Aztec capital but neighboring cities through an extensive trade network. Spanish chronicler Bernal Díaz del Castillo described canoe highways so dense with produce-laden vessels that they resembled floating forests. This abundance fueled the Aztec Empire's growth, allowing for specialized labor divisions that supported artisans, astronomers, and a warrior class. Yet the Chinampas' legacy extends beyond their productivity. They represent a rare harmony between human settlement and ecosystem, a lesson modern cities grappling with climate change are now revisiting. Today, Xochimilco's surviving Chinampas, though reduced, still feed Mexico City while hosting endangered species like the axolotl. Scientists study them as models for flood-resistant agriculture in an era of rising sea levels. The Aztecs didn't just adapt to their environment, they co-evolved with it, crafting a watery Eden where civilization didn't conquer nature, it danced with it. Standing on the remnants of these gardens today, one can almost hear the whispers of farmers who understood something we're only now relearning, that the future of cities might not lie in draining swamps, but in learning to float. Beneath the bustling streets of modern Istanbul lurks a shadowy underworld of staggering scale, the Byzantine Cisterns of Constantinople, subterranean cathedrals of water built to outlast empires. Imagine vaulted ceilings stretching farther than the eye can see, supported by forests of recycled Roman columns, their bases submerged in black mirrors of still water. The largest, the Basilica Cistern, could hold over 27 million gallons, enough to sustain the city through years of siege. But these weren't mere storage tanks, they were masterpieces of psychological warfare, ensuring Constantinople's citizens could laugh at thirst while enemies choked outside their walls. What made these cisterns revolutionary was their dual engineering. While Roman aqueducts like the Valens brought water into the city, the Byzantines perfected the art of keeping it. The basilica's roof, a brick vault coated in waterproof mortar, prevented evaporation even in summer heat. Its floor sloped subtly toward central drainage points, allowing periodic cleaning without emptying the entire reservoir. But the real stroke of genius lay in the columns many pillaged from pagan temples across the empire. By reusing marble monoliths, builders achieved structural stability while sending a clear message. Just as old gods bowed to Christianity, even Rome's grandeur now served Byzantine survival. Walk through the cistern today, and two columns still bear the haunting imprint of Medusa's face, one upside down, the other sideways. Some say they were placed this way to neutralize the Gorgon's power, but pragmatism likely played a role. The unusual orientations allowed perfect load distribution, proving Byzantine engineers valued physics as much as folklore. Meanwhile, the water itself came from sophisticated filtration systems. Clay pipes embedded with charcoal and sand layers removed impurities before water even entered the cisterns, while lead-lined conduits prevented contamination, a sanitation standard medieval Europe wouldn't match for centuries. The cistern's strategic impact was immense. During the Arab siege of 717, when attackers poisoned aqueducts, Constantinople's hidden reserves meant citizens could bathe daily while the besieging army rationed drops. Later, crusaders marveled at public fountains flowing endlessly despite blockades. This hydraulic resilience allowed the empire to endure 1100 years, outlasting Rome itself. Modern engineers still study the cistern's passive cooling effects. The constant water mass stabilized temperatures above ground, creating natural air conditioning for palaces and churches. Even the sound of dripping water was harnessed. Echoing chambers amplified the soothing patter to calm citizens during riots or invasions. Today, as Istanbul's population strains its water supply, these ancient reservoirs whisper a timeless lesson. True power lies not in controlling resources, but in preserving them against all odds. While Egypt measured time with dripping water and Rome moved rivers through stone channels, ancient China solved a more urgent problem: how to feed a civilization where rice paddies climbed steep terraces like liquid staircases. The answer came in the form of chain pumps, deceptively simple devices that transformed back-breaking labor into rhythmic teamwork, lifting water as effortlessly as a bicycle chain turns wheels. Picture a wooden treadmill powered by farmers' steady footsteps, its rotating paddles scooping water from lower canals and depositing it into elevated fields with metronomic precision. This wasn't just irrigation, it was agriculture transformed into communal dance. What set these pumps apart was their elegant scalability. Small versions allowed single families to tend their plots, while massive imperial models, some spanning 30 feet wide, could irrigate entire valleys when operated by teams of 20. The basic design remained unchanged for centuries, interlocking wooden plates or bamboo tubes strung on a continuous loop, sealed with lacquer to prevent leaks. As the tread wheel turned, each segment scooped water at the bottom and released it at the apex into a waiting trough. The genius lay in its adaptability. The same mechanism could lift water 3 feet or 30, depending on the terrain's demands. Historical records from the Han Dynasty reveal how these devices revolutionized rural life. Farmers who once spent half their day hauling water by hand could now tend more land with less effort. The pumps even found military applications. Legend tells of Zhuge Liang using modified versions during the Three Kingdoms period to flood enemy camps or create instant moats. But their true legacy emerged in the rice fields, where consistent irrigation led to crop yields so abundant that China's population doubled between the 8th and 12th centuries. Modern engineers still marvel at the chain pump's mechanical foresight. The same principle of linked buckets later appeared in European mine drainage systems during the Renaissance, and even today, variations power some amusement park log flumes. But perhaps the most poetic tribute exists in rural Yunnan, where elderly farmers still operate century-old pumps not out of necessity, but reverence keeping alive the gentle creak of wood and water that once fed dynasties. Standing beside one in motion, you realize this wasn't just a tool. It was the heartbeat of a civilization that understood how to harness human movement into liquid elevation, turning sweat into sustenance one rhythmic step at a time. Carved into the blush-colored sandstone of Jordan's desert, Petra's fountains weren't just decorative, they were the lifeblood of a city that defied its environment. In a land where annual rainfall barely reached 6 inches, the Nabateans engineered a hydraulic network so precise it could capture every fleeting drop, channeling storms through a labyrinth of channels, cisterns, and pressure pipes to feed fountains that danced in the arid air. Walk through the Sikh today, the narrow gorge leading to Petra's treasury, and you'll notice something extraordinary. Grooves carved into the cliffs at mathematically calculated intervals, funneling water downhill with gravity's help while minimizing evaporation under the relentless sun. The genius of Petra's system lay in its dual purpose. Rainwater collected from rooftops and cliffs didn't just flow into underground reservoirs. It was directed through ornamental fountains lining the city's grand facades. The treasury's iconic urn wasn't merely decorative. Scholars believe it functioned as a pressure-regulated distribution point, releasing water through hidden channels that cooled the plaza while creating microclimates for shade trees. But here's the real marvel. The Nabateans understood fluid dynamics well enough to create pressurized pipelines. Terracotta pipes found near the royal tombs show evidence of carefully calibrated narrowings, early Venturi effect technology that increased water velocity to push streams uphill to elite residences. What's often overlooked is how these fountains served as social infrastructure. The Nymphaeum, Petra's grandest fountain, wasn't just a water source but a civic hub where travelers and merchants gathered beneath its cascades. Its design exploited the cooling properties of evaporation, with misting channels carved into stone benches, an ancient form of air conditioning. Meanwhile, private homes boasted smaller fountains that recirculated water through courtyard gardens, turning personal spaces into desert oases. Modern laser scans reveal the system's hidden complexity. Tunnels dug beneath Petra acted as equalization chambers, stabilizing water pressure across elevations, while sedimentation tanks filtered debris before it reached the fountains. The Nabateans even accounted for flash floods. Their diversion dams and spillways protected the city from sudden deluges while replenishing reservoirs. Standing before these rose-red fountains today, their stone lips dry but their engineering legacy intact, you realize Petra wasn't just a city carved in rock. It was a symphony of hydraulics where every drop of water was made to sing. Along the banks of Syria's Orontes River, a symphony of groaning wood and splashing water once defined daily life in Hama, a chorus performed by the towering Naurias, some reaching 60 feet high. These weren't mere water wheels, they were kinetic sculptures of pure function, their massive wooden frames turning relentlessly like the gears of some ancient liquid clock. What made them extraordinary wasn't just their size, though the largest could lift over 900 gallons per minute, but how they transformed the river's flow into a city's heartbeat. Each Nauria operated on a beautifully simple principle. As the current pushed submerged paddles, the entire wheel rotated, lifting wooden boxes filled with water to the top, where they emptied into aqueducts that fed the city's gardens and public baths. No gears, no pumps, just physics harnessed with such precision that some wheels ran continuously for centuries. The real artistry lay in their construction. Craftsmen used water-resistant walnut and apricot wood, joined with intricate mortise and tenon joints that swelled when wet, creating seals tighter than modern adhesives. The axles alone were engineering marvels, ironclad cedar beams resting on stone pedestals, lubricated by the river itself to prevent friction fires. But the Naurias' magic extended beyond mechanics. Their rhythmic creaks and splashes became Homer's soundtrack, so ingrained in local culture that poets compared them to the voices of ancestral spirits. At night, the wheel's hollow compartments would gulp air, producing deep, resonant tones that echoed through the streets, a natural lullaby for the city. Farmers timed their work to the Naurias' rotations, while children played in the spray of their cascades. Even the aqueducts served dual purposes. Shaded by vines, they became cool promenades where merchants negotiated deals to the sound of dripping water. What's often overlooked is how these wheels shaped social hierarchy. The Naurias' distribution followed a carefully calculated system. The first wheels along the river supplied elite gardens and mosques, while those downstream fed public baths and finally agricultural fields. This wasn't just about water access, it was a liquid manifestation of community structure. During droughts, a council of engineers would adjust flow rates by repositioning paddles or temporarily halting certain wheels, an early example of municipal water management. 17 of these giants still stand today, though silent now, their aqueducts dry. Modern pumps have replaced their labor, but their legacy lingers in unexpected places. The same paddle designs appear in contemporary hydroelectric projects, while their aerodynamic curves inspired wind turbine blades. Standing beside one, you can almost hear the ghosts of their motion, the creak of wood, the slap of water, the whispers of a city that once moved to the rhythm of a river's gift. The Naurias remind us that engineering isn't just about solving problems, but composing the soundtrack of civilization itself. High on a hilltop in ancient Pergamon, engineers faced a problem that would make modern plumbers pause: how to move water across a valley so deep and steep that even gravity seemed to give up. Their solution, the inverted siphon, a hydraulic rebel that scoffed at conventional wisdom by forcing water to climb uphill without pumps or magic. Picture this: a lead pipe plunging down one mountainside, diving beneath a river, then scaling the opposite cliff like a determined mountaineer, all while keeping its liquid cargo flowing smoothly. This wasn't just plumbing, it was physics defied with 4th century BCE swagger. What made Pergamon's system revolutionary was its understanding of pressure, a concept most contemporaries hadn't yet grasped. Unlike Roman aqueducts that relied on gentle slopes, these siphons used the weight of descending water to create enough force to push it back upward. The math was staggering. Pipes along the Madradash line endured pressures exceeding 20 atmospheres, equivalent to the force felt 200 meters underwater. Craftsmen welded lead sheets into tubes with seams so precise they could withstand this brutal stress for centuries. Recent excavations reveal some pipes were even lined with limestone to prevent corrosion, a technique modern engineers would patent in the 1900s. The real brilliance lay in the details. At the valley's lowest point, sediment chambers trapped debris before it could clog the ascent, while air relief valves prevented destructive vacuum bubbles. But here's the kicker: the system self-regulated. If flow rates increased, the extra pressure naturally pushed water higher up the receiving slope, maintaining balance like an ancient analog computer. This allowed Pergamon to span valleys over 600 feet wide without a single arch bridge, a feat that would have required Roman builders to stack aqueducts 3 stories tall. Archaeologists uncovered another clever trick: the pipes weren't uniform. Diameters narrowed strategically at key points to accelerate water velocity, borrowing principles we now call the Bernoulli effect. This innovation let Pergamon's engineers achieve steeper angles than thought possible, delivering water to their acropolis at heights rivaling a 40-story building. The system was so effective that when Germans restored sections in the 1970s, they found original pipes still holding pressure after 2 millennia of earthquakes and wars. Yet the siphon's legacy extends beyond engineering. They powered Pergamon's legendary library, second only to Alexandria's, by controlling humidity levels to preserve priceless scrolls. The same water pressure fed ornate fountains in healing temples where Galen later pioneered medicine. Standing amidst the ruins today, where dry pipe trenches still scar the landscape, you can almost hear the ghostly hiss of water racing through darkness, a testament to thinkers who bent nature's rules to quench their city's thirst. Pergamon didn't just move water, they made it dance across impossible gaps, proving that innovation doesn't always flow downhill, sometimes it climbs. In the dense jungles of Cambodia, where tree roots strangle ancient stones, lie water monuments that defy time, the sacred Barres of Angkor. These colossal reservoirs weren't merely pragmatic. They were liquid mirrors reflecting the cosmos, engineered with such precision that their surfaces captured celestial events like divine television screens. The largest, the West Barre, stretches 5 miles long and 1.5 miles wide, a man-made lake so vast it's visible from space. But its true marvel wasn't size alone. It was how Khmer engineers orchestrated water to dance between earth and sky. The Barres operated on a hydrological ballet. Monsoon rains filled them to precise levels, their earthen embankments reinforced with layered laterite and sandstone to prevent breaches. Yet their alignment revealed deeper genius. During equinoxes, the sun would rise directly over the Barres' central temples, casting golden paths across the water that mirrored the causeways leading to Angkor Wat. This wasn't accidental, it was celestial engineering, where hydraulic necessity met spiritual spectacle. Scholars now believe the Barres served as giant reflecting pools for astronomical observations, their still surfaces allowing priests to track planetary movements with startling accuracy. Beneath this cosmic theater lay astonishing practicality. A network of channels connected the Barres to rice fields, distributing water through adjustable sluice gates that functioned like ancient irrigation apps. But here's the twist: the system was designed for surplus. During droughts, water could be released gradually, while flood seasons saw excess channeled into secondary tanks, preventing destructive overflows. Modern LiDAR scans reveal subterranean channels linking the Barres to neighborhood ponds, an early example of decentralized water management. Spiritual symbolism saturated every drop. The Barres represented the Hindu ocean of milk, their waters believed to purify both body and soul. Kings performed rituals on floating pavilions, their reflections merging with the cosmos in sacred symmetry. Even the reservoir's shapes held meaning. The East Barre's irregular contours mimicked the Ganges' sacred bends, while its islands were positioned to recreate mythic landforms. Today, as climate change threatens modern dams, the Barres whisper forgotten wisdom. Their gentle slopes minimized evaporation, while aquatic plants naturally filtered impurities. Fishermen still cast nets where deities once gazed at their own celestial reflections, proving that Angkor's true genius wasn't just controlling water, but making it sacred. Standing at the edge of these ancient mirrors, you don't just see water, you see a civilization that understood engineering as prayer and reservoirs as portals between worlds. In the heart of ancient Rome, where marble gleamed under Mediterranean sun, the public baths weren't just places to wash, they were liquid cathedrals of social revolution. The Baths of Caracalla, sprawling over 30 acres, could host 1,600 bathers simultaneously, their every need catered by an invisible hydraulic orchestra. Beneath mosaic floors, slaves stoked furnaces in a maze of tunnels, heating air that rose through hollow tiles to warm swimming pools above. a system called hypocaust that kept waters at precise temperatures like some ancient thermostat. But the real magic happened overhead, where aqueducts fed a gravity-powered distribution network so precise it could fill the caldarium's scalding plunge while maintaining the frigidarium's icy chill just yards away. What set Roman baths apart wasn't just their engineering, but their democratization of luxury. For the price of a single coin, even the lowliest citizen could spend hours moving through temperature-regulated chambers, scraping sweat with strigils alongside senators and merchants. The water itself was a status symbol. The great aqueducts like Aqua Nova delivered over 300 million gallons daily, enough for every bathhouse in Rome to operate continuously. Engineers even devised a clever recycling system. Runoff from the hot baths would preheat incoming cold water through parallel pipes, conserving fuel in an early example of energy efficiency. The social impact rippled far beyond cleanliness. Baths became de facto community centers where politicians networked, philosophers debated, and businessmen sealed deals. The Baths of Diocletian featured libraries, gymnasiums, and even theaters, all powered by the same hydraulic systems that fed its pools. Archaeologists found graffiti revealing everything from poetry critiques to gladiator betting pools scrawled on bathhouse walls, proving these were spaces where Rome's pulse truly beat. Yet the most ingenious feature might have been the bath's self-cleaning design. Sloping floors channeled used water into central drains, while overflow channels prevented flooding. The Romans even added vinegar to pool water periodically, an early disinfectant that reduced algae without harming bathers. Modern spa designers still study these layouts, marveling at how 2,000-year-old blueprints outperform many contemporary systems. Standing amidst the towering ruins of Caracalla's baths today, where sunlight streams through skeletal arches onto empty pools, you can almost hear the echoes of splashing water and lively gossip. These weren't just buildings, they were liquid engines of culture, proving that when a society masters water, it doesn't just cleanse bodies, it elevates civilization itself. In the blistering heat of Persia's deserts, where summer temperatures could melt lead, ancient architects devised a cooling system so elegant it required no electricity, just the whisper of the wind. These were the Badgers, or wind catchers, towering structures that rose above mud brick rooftops like natural air conditioners sculpted from earth and sky. Picture a rectangular chimney with vertical slats facing prevailing winds, its interior divided into channels that captured hot breezes, cooled them against subterranean qanat waters, then released refreshed air into homes below. This wasn't just ventilation, it was climate control engineered from elemental forces. The genius of wind catchers lay in their adaptability. Some designs featured adjustable dampers, wooden panels that could be shifted to block sandstorms while still allowing airflow. Others incorporated wet cloth curtains at their bases, adding evaporative cooling to the process. But the real magic happened underground, where wind catchers partnered with qanat tunnels in a symbiotic dance. As hot air descended the tower's shafts, it passed over the qanat's frigid water channels, causing moisture to condense on the walls. This not only cooled the air but added precious humidity to desert dry interiors, creating microclimates where citrus trees could flourish in central courtyards. Archaeologists have identified at least 6 distinct wind catcher styles across Persia, each tailored to local conditions. The Yazd model, with its soaring 4-directional vents, could harvest breezes from any angle, while coastal versions in the Persian Gulf incorporated salt-filtering limestone to prevent corrosion. Some elite homes stacked multiple wind catchers, one for drawing in cool night air, another for expelling daytime heat, creating a natural airflow cycle that modern architects now call passive stack ventilation. The system's precision bordered on poetry. In the city of Kashan, wind catchers were deliberately misaligned with streets to prevent dust intake, while their heights corresponded to wind patterns mapped over generations. Builders even accounted for seasonal shifts. Summer winds were captured high above ground, where air moved faster, while winter breezes entered through lower vents to minimize chilling. The result, interior temperatures could be 20 degrees cooler than the scorching outdoors, with none of the energy costs of modern AC. Today, as sustainable designers revisit these ancient techniques, wind catchers are experiencing a quiet renaissance. Modern versions in Dubai's sustainable city use sensor-operated louvers, while university labs study how qanat-cooled air could reduce urban heat islands. But perhaps their greatest legacy is philosophical proof that human comfort needn't come at nature's expense. Standing beneath a centuries-old badger in Maybod, where the air still carries the faint scent of wet clay and apricots, you realize these weren't just buildings. They were conversations with the wind, written in brick and breeze. On the sun-baked plains of ancient Sri Lanka, where monsoon rains could drown fields for months then vanish without trace for just as long, engineers performed what seemed like meteorological alchemy. They tamed the seasons themselves. King Parakrama Bahu's crown jewel, the Sea of Parakrama, wasn't just a reservoir but a liquid calendar spanning 5,000 acres. Its embankment so precisely contoured they could store enough monsoon water to irrigate the kingdom through 3 consecutive drought years. This wasn't mere water storage. It was climate resilience carved into the landscape 7 centuries before the Industrial Revolution. The secret lay in the tank's cascading design. Smaller village reservoirs called wewas fed into larger regional tanks like the legendary Parakrama Samudra, creating a stepped system where overflow from higher elevations replenished lower tiers. Gravity did the rest, distributing water through a network of stone sluices and underground channels called Bisokatuwa, a valve pits that regulated flow with a precision modern engineers still admire. These weren't static pools but dynamic instruments, their levels rising and falling in sync with crop cycles. During planting season, farmers would petition the king's water masters to open specific sluices, their requests timed to the moon's phases for optimal soil absorption. But the true brilliance emerged in drought years. Inscriptions describe how Parakrama Bahu's engineers devised a volumetric measurement system using carved pillars along tank walls. When water dipped below certain marks, rationing protocols activated, first limiting rice paddies, then reserving water for drinking and sacred bodhi trees. The tanks even served as early weather stations. Priests recorded water temperature fluctuations that predicted monsoon patterns, passing this knowledge through generations in Ola leaf manuscripts. Beyond pragmatism, these reservoirs shaped Sri Lanka's spiritual identity. Their stepped shores became pilgrimage sites where Buddhists meditated on water's impermanence, while the tank's massive spillways doubled as ceremonial staircases during festivals. Modern LiDAR scans reveal something astonishing. Many reservoirs align with celestial events. The full moon's reflection would glide along certain channels during harvest festivals, illuminating carved moonstones in a spectacle blending hydrology and cosmology. Today, as Sri Lanka faces climate crises, these ancient systems are experiencing a revival. Farmers relying on Parakrama Bahu, whose rehabilitated tanks weathered recent droughts better than those dependent on modern wells. The secret, their broad, shallow design minimized evaporation while fostering ecosystems where fish fertilized water for irrigation. A closed-loop agriculture modern permaculturists strive to replicate. Standing on the weathered stones of the Parakrama Samudra's spillway, where dragonflies dart over lotus leaves, you're not just seeing ancient engineering. You're witnessing a civilization that didn't fight nature's rhythms, but composed symphonies with them, rising from the Spanish plains like a stone centipede frozen mid-crawl. The Aqueduct of Segovia defies both time and gravity with its silent arrogance. Built around the 1st century CE, this 11-mile-long beast of granite carries no mortar between its 20,000 precisely fitted blocks. Just the audacious confidence of Roman engineers who knew their stonework could outlast eternity. What makes Segovia's aqueduct extraordinary isn't just its survival, but how it laughs at topography. Where other aqueducts relied on arches to span valleys, this one simply marched up and down the city's hills like a stairmaster, its gradient so exact that water climbed 1 foot every 300 feet of horizontal distance without pumps or pressure chambers. The real magic hides in the granite joints. Each block was carved with microscopic precision, their surfaces slightly concave so that when stacked, they created a self-locking friction fit. Engineers even accounted for seismic activity. The entire structure flexes slightly during earthquakes, its stones shifting then settling back into place like a sleeping giant shrugging. Modern laser scans reveal gaps of less than half a millimeter between most blocks, a tolerance rivaling Swiss watchmaking. But here's the kicker. The aqueduct's signature double arches near Plaza del Azeguillo aren't just for show. Their unusual height allowed carts to pass beneath while creating a natural sediment trap. Water slowed just enough to drop debris before continuing its journey to the city's fountains and bathhouses. Segovia's genius extended underground. The aqueduct's final stretch disappeared into a network of lead pipes called Castellum Divisorum, where bronze faucets diverted flow to different neighborhoods based on a rotating schedule. Archaeologists found clay tokens in nearby ruins, ancient water appointment cards telling households when their turn would come. This wasn't just engineering, it was liquid democracy in stone. Perhaps most astonishing is how the aqueduct adapted to local materials. Unlike Roman projects elsewhere that imported marble or concrete, Segovia's builders used the region's coarse-grained granite, exploiting its natural quartz veins for fracture resistance. They even oriented each block so its crystalline structure aligned with stress points, a geological foresight modern architects are only now rediscovering. Today, as Segovia's tap water still flows from the same mountain springs the Romans tapped, the aqueduct stands not as a ruin but a working heirloom. Its shadow still cools afternoon shoppers, just as it did for Visigoth merchants and medieval knights, the real testament to its design. After 2,000 winters, not a single block has needed replacement. That's not architecture, that's a conversation between human ambition and stone, whispered across centuries in the language of perfect angles and patient gravity. Descending into Adalaj Vav feels like stepping into an inverted palace, a realm where every inch of stone whispers stories of devotion, survival, and artistry chiseled into being. This 5-story, deep stepwell in Gujarat doesn't just defy gravity, it defies categorization, blending Hindu craftsmanship, Islamic symmetry, and Jain austerity into a subterranean symphony of light and shadow. Unlike the grand temples or forts that dominate India's architectural legacy, Adalaj's genius lies in its humility, a structure built not to touch the sky, but to embrace the earth's hidden waters, transforming necessity into transcendence. The stepwell's design reveals an almost obsessive attention to human experience. Each of its 345 steps is slightly wider than the last, creating an optical illusion that makes the descent feel effortless while the ascent appears shorter, a psychological trick to ease the labor of water carriers. Octagonal pillars line the cavernous interior, their geometric precision funneling cool air downward like a natural air conditioner. while strategically placed apertures allow sunlight to pierce the depths in shifting patterns that mark the hours without clocks. But the real showstoppers are the carvings. Deities dance alongside floral arabesques, elephants march in stone processions, and even erotic scenes hide in shadowed niches, ensuring that every trip for water became a journey through a living gallery. Adalaj's construction tale is as layered as its architecture. Built in 1499 by Queen Rudabai to honor her slain husband, the stepwell became a bargaining chip between warring kingdoms. Its Muslim conqueror allegedly spared the artisans on condition they create something unparalleled. The result, a fusion of styles where lotus motifs mingle with star and crescent patterns, and Sanskrit prayers share walls with Quranic verses. This cultural alchemy extends to the water itself. The well's central shaft was designed so that even during droughts, a single drop falling from its depths would echo through the chamber like a sacred bell, reassuring villagers that the earth hadn't abandoned them. Modern engineers still puzzle over the stepwell's hydrological intelligence. Its staggered terraces acted as sedimentation tanks, allowing impurities to settle before water reached the pristine main reservoir. During monsoons, excess flow would trigger a clever siphoning effect through side channels, preventing floods while replenishing groundwater tables, a rainwater harvesting system centuries ahead of its time. Even the carvings served a purpose. Intricate latticework doubled as erosion control, breaking the force of cascading water during heavy rains. Today, as Adalaj's waters recede from neglect, its stone lips no longer kiss the surface that once fed thousands. Yet the stepwell's legacy persists in unexpected ways. Contemporary architects study its passive cooling techniques for eco-friendly designs, while psychologists note how its play of light and space creates an innate sense of tranquility, proof that beauty isn't just aesthetic but biological. Standing at its lowest step, where the air hums with centuries of whispered prayers and clattering pots, you realize Adalaj wasn't just built to store water. It was crafted to hold something far more precious, the human capacity to transform survival into art and utility into wonder. High in the rugged hills of northwestern Spain, the Romans didn't just mine for gold, they unleashed liquid fire upon the earth. Los Medulas, now a surreal landscape of jagged red spires and hollowed-out cliffs, stands as the scarred testament to an industrial operation so vast it required rewriting entire watersheds. This wasn't pickaxes and shovels, it was hydrological warfare. The Romans called it ruina montium, the wrecking of mountains, and the name couldn't have been more literal. Picture teams of engineers tunneling into hillsides like ants, then suddenly releasing millions of gallons of stored water to blast apart rock formations in seconds. The ground didn't just surrender its gold, it was obliterated by calculated tsunamis. What made Los Medulas revolutionary was its scale and precision. Over 150 miles of aqueducts, some dangling precariously along cliff faces, channeled water from the nearby Sierra de la Cabra Mountains into massive storage tanks. When the signal came, sluice gates would open, sending torrents through a labyrinth of carved channels that acted like natural pressure hoses. The water didn't just wash away debris, it exploited cracks in the quartz veins, hydraulically fracturing the rock in a technique modern fracking companies would recognize. But here's the twist: the Romans didn't have pumps or dynamite. Their secret weapon was patience. By saturating the hillsides for days beforehand, they turned the mountain itself into a collaborator. Water seeped into fractures, freezing overnight to widen gaps, priming the rock for its own destruction. The aftermath resembled a Martian landscape. Workers would sift the slurry through sheepskin-lined channels, where gold particles caught in the wool while lighter debris washed away, an early form of placer mining. Estimates suggest the operation yielded over 5 million pounds of gold over 2 centuries, financing emperors and legions, but the real cost was etched into the earth. The cliffs of Los Medulas still bleed rust-colored streaks where iron-rich minerals oxidized, their jagged silhouettes looking less like natural formations and more like the broken teeth of a defeated giant. Modern ecologists have uncovered an unexpected silver lining. The Romans' destructive efficiency accidentally created a unique microclimate where chestnut trees now thrive in the porous, water-retentive soil. Birds nest in the honeycombed cliffs, and wildflowers blanket what was once an industrial wasteland. Even the aqueducts, long since collapsed, have become wildlife corridors. It's a poignant reminder that nature eventually co-opts even our most violent interventions. Standing among these surreal formations today, you're not just looking at an ancient mine, you're witnessing the birth of environmental engineering. The same water that dismantled mountains now feeds vibrant ecosystems, proving that the Romans' true legacy wasn't just the gold they took, but the unintended wilderness they left behind. Los Medulas whispers a timeless lesson. When humans reshape the earth eventually reshapes us right back. At the heart of Bali's emerald rice terraces, where water glides like liquid silk from one stepped field to another, lies a secret more powerful than any dam or pipeline: the Sabak water temples. These aren't just shrines adorned with offerings. They're the living brainstem of an irrigation network so finely tuned that UNESCO declared it a World Heritage Site, not for its engineering, but for its philosophy. Picture this: 1,000 farmers gathering not to argue over water rights, but to sit in silent meditation before carved stone deities, their decisions guided by a calendar that aligns lunar cycles with crop rotations. This is hydraulic democracy in its purest form, where drops of water and grains of rice carry the weight of cosmic balance. The Sabak system's brilliance lies in its refusal to separate technology from spirituality. Each temple serves as a control hub for a network of bamboo pipes and earthen canals, but the real magic happens during monthly meetings where priests and farmers consult the tetikan, a bamboo staff etched with measurement notches. Water allocations aren't dictated by wealth or status, but by a sacred principle called triheta karana, harmony between humans, nature, and the divine. A farmer growing water-intensive rice near the top of a terrace might receive fewer hours of flow than his neighbor below growing less thirsty crops, not because of hierarchy, but because the system recognizes that every field is a cell in a larger organism. Modern hydrologists mapping these flows discovered something astonishing. The Sabak channels follow fractal mathematics, their branching patterns mirroring the Fibonacci sequence found in Balinese ferns and temple carvings. This isn't coincidence, it's evidence of an ancient understanding that water moves best when it mimics nature's own designs. The temples themselves are strategically placed at confluences where gravitational flow can be gently redirected with small stone weirs, creating self-regulating pressure zones that prevent erosion. During heavy rains, excess water gets diverted to purification ponds lined with volcanic sand before cycling back into the system, a closed-loop filtration system predating modern permaculture by centuries. But the true wonder emerges during planting seasons. Temple priests use star charts and insect migration patterns to coordinate planting across entire watersheds, creating staggered harvests that naturally regulate pest populations without pesticides. When pests do appear, farmers don't reach for chemicals. They perform rituals asking forgiveness for upsetting the balance, then introduce predator ducks that feast on snails while fertilizing the paddies. This isn't superstition, it's sophisticated agroecology wrapped in cultural practice. Today, as Bali's aquifers strain under hotel developments, the Sabak system faces its greatest test. Yet its legacy ripples through modern water diplomacy. The same egalitarian principles now inform transboundary river treaties in Southeast Asia, while urban planners study its fractal networks for flood-resistant city designs. Standing knee-deep in a Jatalui rice terrace at dawn, watching water divide like veins of quicksilver across 1,000 fields, you realize these temples don't just distribute water. They teach us that every drop carries a choice between conflict and communion, between scarcity and sacred abundance. The Balinese didn't just build an irrigation system, they coded an entire worldview into the movement of water itself. Long before the Roman aqueducts or the Kanats of Persia, the dusty plains of Mesopotamia witnessed humanity's first great hydraulic revolution, a sprawling web of canals that turned unpredictable rivers into the lifeblood of civilization. Picture the Euphrates and Tigris not as wild forces of nature, but as carefully harnessed servants, their waters divided and redirected through thousands of miles of hand-dug channels. This wasn't just irrigation, it was the birth of large-scale social organization where water management required and created the world's first cities. The math alone staggers modern minds. By 3000 BCE, Sumerian engineers had constructed canals so extensive that satellite imagery still reveals their ghostly traces beneath Iraq's farmlands, some stretching over 50 miles from their river sources. What set Mesopotamia's canals apart was their sheer ambition. Unlike simple ditches, these were precisely graded waterways with sophisticated control systems. Farmers used adjustable wooden gates to regulate flow, while sedimentation basins filtered silt that could clog channels. But here's the real breakthrough: the canals were designed as a network, not isolated lines. Primary arteries branched into smaller distributors, then into field-level capillaries, creating a fractal pattern that maximized coverage while minimizing water loss. Archaeologists have uncovered clay tablets detailing meticulous maintenance schedules, proving these weren't ad hoc projects but institutionalized infrastructure. One tablet from Lagash records a royal decree punishing anyone who took more than their allotted water share, an early example of legal systems evolving to protect shared resources. The social impact rippled far beyond agriculture. Canals became the spines of urban planning, with cities like and Uruk growing along their banks like beads on a string. Barges laden with grain, pottery, and lapis lazuli plied these liquid highways, fueling trade networks that stretched from the Indus Valley to the Mediterranean. The system even birthed new technologies. The need to lift water from canals into higher fields led to the invention of the shaduf, a counterweighted bucket lever that's still used in rural Iraq today. And when annual floods threatened disaster, engineers built diversion channels and emergency spillways, turning potential catastrophe into controlled replenishment of the soil. Yet Mesopotamia's hydraulic triumph carried the seeds of its own undoing. Over centuries, mineral buildup from constant irrigation salted the earth, gradually choking crops in their own success. Some scholars argue this ecological collapse contributed to the region's eventual decline, a poignant reminder that even the greatest engineering must work with nature, not against it. Modern satellite thermal scans reveal something haunting. The ghost canals still influence groundwater patterns millennia after their abandonment, their outlines visible in the lushness of crops growing above their buried paths. Standing on the cracked earth where the Euphrates once fed the Hanging Garden's legendary predecessors, you realize these canals weren't just channels for water, they were conduits for civilization itself. The first tax systems emerged to fund their upkeep, the first writing to record their yields, the first bureaucracies to manage their distribution. In bending rivers to their will, the Mesopotamians didn't just grow crops, they cultivated the very idea of what a society could be. Their legacy flows not just through history's irrigation ditches, but through every city that owes its existence to the audacious dream that water could be made to obey. From the whispering Kanats of Persia to the celestial Barres of Angkor, these 23 forgotten water marvels aren't just relics. They're living proof that necessity isn't just the mother of invention, but the architect of human genius. Each drop of water these systems channeled carried more than sustenance. It carried the seeds of civilization itself, urban planning in Rome's aqueducts, democracy in Bali's water temples, even artistry in India's stepwells. What's astonishing isn't just how they built these systems, but why. Without satellites or software, they mapped watersheds with their feet, calculated slopes with their eyes, and turned entire landscapes into collaborative dialogues between earth and water. The real magic lies in their legacy. Next time you turn on a faucet, think of the Minoan pipes that first brought running water indoors. When you see a modern dam, remember the Sri Lankan kings who mastered monsoon harvesting 1,000 years ago. Even today's climate solutions, rainwater harvesting, passive cooling, decentralized irrigation echo ancient wisdom we're only now relearning. These engineers didn't just solve problems, they asked questions we're still grappling with. How do we share resources fairly? How do we build in harmony with nature? Their answers, etched in stone and sediment, challenge our obsession with high-tech fixes. After all, what's more advanced, a solar-powered pump that breaks in 5 years or a qanat that flows for millennia? But beyond the engineering, these marvels tell a deeper story about human resilience. The Nazca puquios weren't just wells, they were acts of defiance against a desert that dared them to wither. The hanging gardens, whether myth or reality, symbolize our eternal longing to carve beauty from barrenness. And in the silent cisterns of Constantinople, we hear the quiet confidence of a people who knew survival isn't about hoarding resources, but safeguarding them for generations unseen. So as we close this journey, I'm left wondering which of these marvels resonates with you. Is it the democratic waters of Bali's Subak, or the cosmic ambition of Angkor's reservoirs? Maybe it's the humble terracotta pipes of Knossos, reminding us that progress often hides in the mundane. Drop your favorite in the comments. I'd love to hear what captures your imagination. And if you've enjoyed unearthing these hidden chapters of history, hit that subscribe button to join me for more adventures where the past isn't just preserved, but pulsing with relevance. Until then, keep looking closer at the world around you. Sometimes the most extraordinary stories aren't written in books, but in the quiet flow of water through ancient stone.